how's it going?
Going good. Going good. How are you?
Doing well. Sorry about the scheduling snafu there. The change in daylight savings time changes my UTC minus time, and it didn't reflect in my Google Calendar.
Basically, I'm gonna kill you now. So, just kidding.
As long as you wait till the end, that'll be fine with me.
Okay. Nice.
And you have to do it with the sword.
All right. I will. Pure
Yeah, hopefully,
destruction.
hopefully you've had a little more practice with that thing.
I have not. Oh God, my back. I'm gonna do some stretching while we wait. How's everybody doing? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, you're great.
Nice.
Yeah, give everyone just a minute or so to flood in here. Stretching is.
You ever get like a crick in your upper back and it's so hard to crick?
Yeah, I basically wake up in severe physical pain every day after 13 years in the military, and some of the things that I've done. I spend copious amounts of time stretching to try to make myself feel better.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I wasn't in the military though. I'm just tall, so my body is like prone to finding problems.
Stretching
I hope.
helps though. I use
Yeah,
this app.
definitely.
I use this app called Pliability, and it's like 20 to 40-minute long focus stretches. Works like a charm.
Are you a mobility WOD guy?
I didn't used to be, but I am now. I used to focus a lot in, strength and mass, and then, cardio shape for the
When
military.
you
And
get
then
old.
as I've gotten older and some of the injuries on airborne jumps and then a bad motorcycle accident, I can't really lift the same way that I used to anymore. So I do a lot of
Yeah,
CrossFit style stuff, as much as it kills me to admit that out loud.
yeah, that's okay. You like Kelly Starrett?
I do. Supple Leopard, that book changed my life.
Yeah, same. It helped me resolve back pain. Like I had back pain age 19 to 24, and then a friend recommended how to be a supple leopard, and then yeah, I got it under control. But I started doing yoga, and now like the disc, like the lower disc pain doesn't hurt, but I'm still kind of crickety, so but I'm much better off. And I don't have as much time to stretch as I did like a couple years ago. So I like am not that great about it, but I've got like all the voodoo floss and the peanuts and all the smashing implements right in my drawer over there in case I ever need to destroy myself.
They
But
work.
yeah,
It's a good pain though. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, loosen up that fascia, get your shit on point. I'm all
yeah.
about it. To the audience, how to be a supple leopard. That's the real alpha. Your health is your wealth. So if you're looking for a 10x on your health, definitely mobility is a good workout paradigm to get interested in.
Yeah, Kelly Starrett's the man. Highly
Yeah,
recommend.
yeah, he's cool. He got good videos. He's like not that great at business. Like sometimes I see the stuff he does and I cringe a little bit, but he's smart enough that it doesn't even matter. He's
Yeah,
got
he
like a ton of products and videos and whatnot.
yeah, he recently rebranded to something else. I can't remember what
The
it's
ready
called, but
state, yeah,
yeah,
the
that's
ready
it. The Ready
state.
State. Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
dude, what are you doing? But I'm sure there's a reason. He made like an app that nobody uses. But I mean, I think his private practice, he probably makes an insane amount. So
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Working with professional athletes and the level of people he does.
yeah, for real. Um, I'm gonna take off my glasses and be uh, look dumber. Because I'm not on camera. Let me know when you want to get started.
All right, yeah, I think we're good to go. I'll go ahead and do the intro, and then we'll kick it off.
Sweet, yeah, go for it.
All right.
Oh, is this recorded? Let me.
It is. Yeah, and then
Okay,
we got our audio engineer here in the audience as well, and he's recording it. We'll post it to YouTube within 24 hours as well, and I'll send you that link.
nice. I will leave it to you then, sir.
All right. Welcome, everybody. My name's Relentless, owner and team lead for DeFi Raiders. We got one hell of an exciting day as we get to talk to the one and only Bebis from Byte Masons. Thanks, everyone, for taking the time out of your day to join us. And thank you so much, JB, for joining us today. Really means a lot. Really excited to talk to you. So thanks for joining us and welcome.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Super excited to talk to you, connect with your community, and I hope I can convince them that what we're doing is cool. So, I'll. You want me to give you a rundown of our team and all that?
Yeah, go for it.
Sweet. So yeah, we're Byte Masons. We've been, in the mix here in DeFi for a little over 2 years now. Um, I guess like second generation DeFi builders after like your curves, and your early Aave and compound implementations. Um, right now, our team boasts 16 engineers. We're about 26 people strong. We manage over 500 smart contracts in production. We've advised projects worth in total close to, well, not worth, but managing in total close to 10 billion AUM over 2021. We have a pretty long list of successes, uh, a shorter list of failures. But we're always here to, experiment and try our hardest and push the industry forward. And I hope to talk to you guys about some of that today. And we have some team members in the audience. And we run Reaper.farm, Granary.finance, two of our applications. We're coming out with a few more that we've been working on for a few years, namely Ethos Reserve, uh, Reliquary, which is a yield primitive, Ethos Reserve being a stablecoin primitive, and then a wallet, which I'm not going to name quite yet. But we hope to kind of control the most diverse set of DeFi brands in the industry, and compose like a really strong ecosystem with each brand having an individual identity, and also being technically on the cutting edge and beyond. So we're really research focused, trying to push all this stuff to the point where it can compete with TradFi. Hopefully, that's our ultimate goal.
Awesome. Appreciate the rundown. Yeah, we're going to dive into a bunch of those things that you mentioned. So I know there's a lot of stuff that there's not a lot of documentation out, so I'm excited to ask about a few of those things. I know you guys keep a lot of things, real close until it's time, so we'll try
Yeah,
to get as much out of you as we can on that.
totally.
But first, I have to ask before we get into what you guys are doing and some of the questions we have. What do you think about what's going on with Binance and FTT and what just happened today?
Yeah, honestly, really, really, really did not expect that. I think like the air of confidence that SPF has displayed historically made this extra like confusing because he's not like a big braggadocious uh, guy like you see with your Do Kwons and your Zuzus. Uh, so when I saw his tweets and CZ's tweets saying that CZ or Binance intended to acquire FTX, I was like shocked, kind of like beyond belief. But then like I sat down and I thought about it and I was like, you know what? It kind of makes sense because SBF, that's the guy who said, "Sell me all your soul at $10 or whatever." Making big ballsy moves. And I think like he kind of painted a target on his head. Uh, with all of the regulatory talk and his desire to make DeFi illegal to a certain extent. So yeah, I was surprised, but in retrospect, it seems obvious, and I'm sure we're going to have to deal with another couple months of ferocious unwinding. It seems like the market has already priced a lot of that in. Um, so now we need to wait for the period of unwinding and then wait for like all the other big players who might want to enter crypto, um, to find some money to buy back in. So I think we're going to be in the pits for a little while here, but I don't think it spells doom and gloom like some people think.
Yeah, I mean, some people are selling that doom to pump their own bags, but I mean, there's always the forever
That's true.
pessimists. Anytime there's a market shift down, they think crypto's dead right off the rip. So,
Yeah. I mean, I'm a pessimist, and I think anybody who's managing a portfolio should be a pessimist. I mean, what better way
mhm.
to manage risk than always expect the worst? Um, but yeah, some people, it's obvious they have leveraged shorts open, and I hope those people justifiably get wrecked. Although I'm sure a lot of them made a lot of money over the past 24.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good. I mean, I don't think you could have expected this today for them to make that money, but yeah, there's definitely all the people who are, saying Bitcoin's going to 14 and all that stuff, and
Yeah,
so
I
most,
trade maybe once or like I trade maybe once a quarter, and for the past 3 months, I've been DCAing into a Bitcoin short against Oath on Granary on Optimism. So every week I would put like another chunk of money in that position, and I just closed it all today, and it felt really good to be honest. Um, I'm not a good trader, but sometimes like when my conviction is really high, I like to do it. So I'm feeling pretty high on the hog today. If I
yeah, I'm with
traded
you.
regularly, I would get wrecked nonstop, I'm sure.
Agreed. I don't know enough to. I'm working slowly through STF Academy, which is one of our partners. They run a structured trading academy that's really good. But
Nice.
I definitely opened a short on Bitcoin at right about 21. And so I closed that earlier, and that felt nice to get a trade win because I haven't had many of those in my day. So I'll take
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I feel the same way. I like it's easy for me to kind of see problems. It's easy for me to see risk and see like, oh, you know what, this is way overvalued. But so in a bear market, am pretty well advantaged. But in a bull market, like I can't really get in the pumpamental mindset very well. So like I generally lose when it's not a bear market. So I'm sure like, I'll be sad cat in another year here.
I'll take the wins where you got them, I guess.
Yeah, for real.
So, all right, cool. We'll move on so we can really get into what everyone's here to listen about. But so first, what I want to talk about is kind of just how's your transition to Optimism gone overall? What advantages have you seen since you've moved to that ecosystem?
Yeah, so you know, our first step onto the ecosystem was into governance and um being kind of like, I mean, of course I mean, I don't, not to be like a dickhead, but we're a pretty big deal on Phantom. So we stepped into the Optimism governance, hoping we could leverage some of our credibility here, and kind of got shot down. So we started like a little bit behind the eight ball because the rest of our competitors were getting OP allocations and all sorts of funding. So we're like, okay, now we need to, do our thing and just like do a good job and hope for the best. Um, and since then, we've clawed our way without any incentives, as we tend to do, into the top 10 uh, projects on Optimism. We've got like 25 mil TVL. Well, I'm sure less now. I would need to check, but yeah, I mean, we're doing very, very well, all things considered. And now that we've put a lot of time and effort in, we're about to step to the Optimism governance again and say, hey, I told you guys, maybe now you can help us structure some incentives. Um, but otherwise, like, I think as far as the community, definitely not better than Phantom. I think as far as the UX, uh, on par as long as you ignore gas costs. So transactions are pretty snappy, things are pretty reliable, but you're paying 10, 20, 30 times more than you are on Phantom. So there's like kind of another chin scratcher over there. But the developer community, I would say, is thriving. So a lot of the kind of DeFi old heads moved over to Optimism. I really don't know why everybody chose Optimism over Arbitrum. Um, I think because the guy who wrote the OVM is like, he's the guy that like hacked the PlayStation Network a while ago. He's like a really famous hacker guy. So I think that probably people read about that, and everybody had their eyes on Optimism since. That was maybe a year or so ago, that they brought him in to write that. So overall experience positive. I think they have a long way to go, especially compared to Phantom, but we're kind of winning the game. And if we keep up our current rate of growth, we'll probably be a top 5 project there relatively soon.
Oh hell yeah. Yeah, I got, full disclosure, everybody, I do have some money in Reaper, so I know that I don't want to be out here, talking about it without disclosing. I don't want to get Kim Kardashian here. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah,
Me too, by the way. I don't
yeah,
want to get Kim
yeah.
Kardashian.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean Reaper, your APRs on your stables are great. I've been parking all my stables in there, so yeah, you guys are doing. I was pumped when I saw it, just based off the hype that was coming around Optimism, and then you guys started moving over to there, and I'm
Yeah.
obviously a big fan of Phantom, and I hope to see some things turn around there in the long run, because there's such a great community and great tech, and just great
Yeah.
people over there. So, but yeah, I'm definitely taking advantage of what you guys are doing on Optimism for sure. So,
Nice. Yeah, I hope Phantom can just
and
take over Optimism as like the default Phantom L2. I think that would be pretty fun, and they could really, really, really use the community. Like, going to an AMA on Optimism versus going to an AMA on Phantom is like, uh, you know, the difference couldn't be starker. Like, we had an AMA literally with synthetics, like the top derivatives protocol on Ethereum. On their main Discord, we had a Twitter Spaces, like 5 people showed up. And you go to any Phantom type event, even if it's not that well advertised, they're getting at least 40. So there are definitely like there's a lot of disconnects there, a lot of like lines that need to be crossed, but they are young. It took us years to kind of build this on Phantom, and I think like the red circle is kind of swaggy, so hopefully we can start building community there, and give it a personality, because right now it's kind of like pretty corporate. Or they try to be like, oh, we're decentralized governance, whatever. But in all my dealings with it, it's been extremely corporate and centralized, in the hands of like VCs and delegates. So we'll see where that ends up, but I'm optimistic. No pun intended.
I see what you did there. Yeah, I mean, with the right teams of people moving over, I think that's a good realistic outlook for how it could play out. So just need the right influence. So.
For sure.
Um, And then, yeah, and then also kind of a couple more. I'll ask a couple more questions about a couple things you guys are doing on Optimism, and then we'll really get into the Oath ecosystem here.
Sure.
I wanted to chat a little bit about your relationship with Sonne. So I'm a big fan of them. I did an AMA with Attican, and I'm a big fan of their project and what they're doing. So, but my question is, considering they offer some of the things that Granary does as the first native Aave style protocol, how's it been beneficial for you guys to partner with them and not take away from what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like, what's happening at Sonne, like they're going through their most kind of expressive period, and that they're emitting a ton of tokens. Their personality is forming, their direction is forming. And early on we integrated with them, and I didn't even know it was Attican. And then we started getting a lot of TVL. I started reviewing their code more. The Reaper team did some DD, and I was like, we need to get their multi-sig behind a time lock here. So I was like making a fuss. I was like knocking on their door, and then Attican pops out, and I'm like, oh wow, hey man. So we helped them kind of up their security a little bit and get primed to bring on like Beefy and some of the other partner protocols. Um, and then we talked for like an hour and a half about how to actually execute his roadmap, about like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we designed some legal infrastructure that might help them along. So, I mean, like, I think a relationship with them with them is great because we're getting a lot of TVL through Reaper through them, and their success is our success to a certain extent. And as far as Granary goes, like, we're not taking fees on on like borrowing on Granary. We're taking like 1% compared to the industry standard, like 15. Granary exists really as a marketing tool for us going into the launch of Grain, and beyond that, going into the launch of Granary V2, which Sonne existing alongside Granary V2 is really just a huge positive for us, because the whole point of Granary V2 is, we're taking this huge overhead in DeFi lending. So, you know, every DeFi protocol, every DeFi lending protocol generally is overcapitalized 2 times, 3 times, 4 times plus. And what Granary V2 does is it rehypothecates those underlying assets. And it does that in a principal protected way. So it makes sure that any strategy that it's deploying underlying assets to isn't prone to loss. And we can generally assess risk like days, weeks plus in advance. So having like a really close lending partner, not only do they use different architecture than Granary, so they're built on Compound, we're built on Aave, but they are friendly. We know that they operate in good faith. They're emitting a lot of tokens. They're a very token-centric protocol, so we'll be able to, once Granary V2 is live, farm them quite a bit. So I see it as long-term positive sum. I would love to see them succeed, and I think their long-term vision differs pretty greatly from ours, and they're centered uh, really on Turkey and growing out banking infrastructure there, whereas we're more focused on U.S., Swiss global type institutions. So different markets, different focuses long term, and in the short term, I think there's a lot of synergy anyway. So I like Sonne, I like Attican, and I think them existing on Optimism being friendly toward us is 100 thumbs up. So, and I like having competition, especially friendly competition, is like it's way more fun than having people that want to gut you in the streets. Yeah. So I appreciate them a lot.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Cool. Yeah, so since you guys base it off the Aave style protocol, what changes did you make to the way that Aave runs theirs, or what are the differences between Granary and Aave specifically?
Yeah. So Granary V1 is kind of like us learning how to run a lending protocol and us applying a lot of our research. So really the difference in Granary V2 is a lot in configuration. So we designed different interest rate curves for Granary V2 to make it more friendly for borrowers and less volatile. Usually, I'm sure you've seen this. Once you hit about 60 to 70% utilization rate, interest rates are extremely volatile because you're going from curve one, which is relatively flat and shallow, to curve two, which rises exponentially.
Mhm.
So we've kind of made everything more flat overall, and then crank up the interest rates pretty severely only toward the end. So it's kind of built for leverage farming, wrapping assets. It's built for Reaper in a lot of ways. Um, so that's one of the changes. And then we only take a 1% reserve factor as opposed to like your normal 15, 20, 30%. Geist is 55%. And that's really how much of the borrow APR that we move to a treasury. And again, that kind of goes more toward this is for users. This is an opportunity for us to market. This is an opportunity for us to scale and compete without having to emit a bunch of tokens. But um, you know, uh, going to Granary V2, I mean, like the implications are pretty massive of the work we're doing, and the value of building community now without having to spend an insane amount of money on marketing just by giving people better value is invaluable, because once Granary V2 comes out, we just eat up the whole lending market, and that's kind of the ultimate goal. So it differ, and it has like a multi-rewarder, which I guess matters a little bit. Some of our incentive programs are matched, like on Phantom and whatnot, whereas Aave V2 normally just allows for, excuse me, single rewards. So yeah, long story short, not that different, but the intention is much different, and we apply some of our risk research, and we like to like create situations, like add collateral, and then monitor how the market reacts, so that we can apply a lot of our, learnings to this next version that's coming out in the next, 3 months or so.
Ah, nice. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I think your 1% fee is marketing enough. Um,
Yeah, yeah, it is.
yeah,
It is
that's
super duper cheap. Like if you're a borrower, it's really gangster, unless you're getting emitted tokens. But um, even then, like an assumption that we make that underpins a lot of our like interest rate research is like yield will always trend toward market rate, uh, and anytime your yield does not make it to market rate, there's a problem, and you're going to get arbed. And I would say like the biggest one that comes to mind is like Tomb, for example. I'm sure we all remember Tomb. Um, their
mhm.
interest rates were between 100 and 300% for the longest time. And um, if that's where the market places your interest rate, what you should think is not, oh wow, this is the best deal ever. What you should be thinking is, you know, what's the EV of this investment if the interest rate's over 100%? So yeah, it's kind of a good heuristic for assessing the risk of a position or the risk of assets. Is the more yield, generally, the more risk and the lower EV. So value today plus X amount of yield over X amount of time doesn't always equal, like it's not a simple equation, because factoring in downside risk, factoring in volatility, a lot of times positions like that have negative EV, and it's just people don't know it yet. The people that do know it are the ones that are going to profit off the trade. The people that don't, um, retail or the uninitiated, are generally the ones that lose. So if you're a DeFi newbie, definitely keep that in mind. If the interest rate is high, ask a lot of questions before you put your money there.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I had that piece of advice when I first joined DeFi about a year ago, because man, did I get wrecked chasing those APRs and not
Yeah,
knowing what I was doing.
yeah.
And then, but hey, great
I've
lessons learned. Just
I've
learned the
come
hard way.
to I've come to appreciate the Fed's like 4% or so on a 30-year Treasury bond. Now I see that and I'm like, 4%, that ain't bad. But comparing it to, although I don't think savings accounts are getting away with it as much, but comparing it to like the 0.3%, 0.1%, whatever, that people are getting now. Um, but yeah, it's a wild world, and we're kind of learning alongside you. I mean, we're perhaps a few steps ahead because it's our job, but I think nobody has it fully figured out quite yet, as far as how to assess risk in crypto, how to identify like long tail arbitrage opportunities, uh, etc. It's very hard. It's very complex, um, but try to keep it simple would be my recommendation.
Yeah, totally agree. I look now and I see I can put my stable somewhere for 16%. I'm like, yes, please. I had a couple of those plays where it was like went to
Mm.
bed at 2,100% APR, and the next day, like all the liquidity. I went to bed all excited and woke up the next day and I was gone. I'm
Yeah,
like, damn, that was
yeah.
not the 2,100% I was expecting. So
Minus 2,100% somehow. Somehow you owe the
yeah,
smart contract a huge debt. It happens. It's okay.
yeah. I mean, based off losing the rewards, it was definitely negative 2,100%. So yeah, some bad days there, but hey, got me to where I am now, so I'll take it.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So And then last kind of question about specifically what you guys are doing just in OP is your veVelo vaults with Pain.finance. What was the inspiration behind developing a vault for the NFT model?
Yeah, so the inspiration was really like this was a chance for us to flex our muscles a little bit. And beyond that, it was a chance to plug into the optimism community on a pretty deep level. So I'll maybe address those in two parts. This vault, so the veVelo voter vault, if you want to know what that is, you can head over to my Medium, OX Bebis. Um, Essentially, it is. I mean, it's not even really a vault. It's a manager contract that's able to be granted permissions to perform actions on your behalf, and those actions are bribing, claiming rewards, liquidating rewards, and sending you the profit. So right now we have a vault that without touching your VE NFT, so we don't take custody of the VE NFT, the vault is able to take your voting rights from the VE NFT, so you maintain all the value, all the capital, and then allocate those voting rights from your VE NFT to one of a series of voting strategies. And those voting strategies, all they do is we give them something to vote for, and they vote for it every epoch. And then we can update that based on what the most optimal voting structure is. So whether it be the highest bribe or voting for the highest volume pool, we'll be able to analyze and execute based on that information. And the cool thing about that uh, is like normally these convex systems are designed in such a way that they require you to take on like a derivative asset. They require market making. They require, for example, like CLVECRV or the liquid driver spirit derivative or like the beefy FTM derivative or whatever. And the thing about those assets is they rarely hold peg because the true value of the underlying asset, especially when demand for interest is low, is generally lower than the asset you hold. So a lot of times, like Convex and similar systems, they sell you a product where it's like, hey, you're going to be able to get this derivative that's worth exactly as much as the token you put in. When the reality is you're generally exposed to more downside risk than the true token. So by maintaining all that liquidity and being able to maximize your votes, you kind of get the best of both worlds. So you remain like you maintain a fully liquid position that you're responsible for. It saves us the work of market making. It saves us the work of worrying about weird derivative assets. And it gives you like a ton of revenue, and the bribe revenues over 100% APR for these VENFTs. And it's really just a massive opportunity. And while we have one that compounds veVelo into your VENFT right now, we're creating one that takes those assets and turns them into USDC. So you just give us your VENFT and you get USDC on the back end every epoch. So really it's insanely useful, insanely low risk, and we solve a lot of the problems of these convex systems. And I think it really highlights the power of Velodrome in a way that, nothing else can, and in a way that is like really technically advanced. So if you are a Solidity developer, I welcome you to dig through the veVelo um, code base and maybe be amazed by some of our engineers' work. But yeah, it's the perfect layer on top of Velodrome, and we're really proud of it. Long story short. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great product. I mean, people will be really excited when they're getting paid out in USDC too. Um,
Yeah,
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 I mean,
it's
awesome,
dope.
awesome
Yeah, we're
concept.
moving to production soon in the next couple of weeks. So it's on Pain.finance right now, which is our experimental test ground. But you'll see it on Reaper soon enough.
All right. That's exciting. Yeah, I was digging through Pain. I know there's only the NFT position there on Pain, but yeah, it's cool. I like the concept.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great work. I mean, you guys are doing awesome stuff. So I don't want to like blow smoke up your ass or anything, but yeah, it's fucking awesome. So,
Thanks a
all right.
lot.
Yeah, and then I meant to mention before to everyone who's listening, I should have started at the beginning. We had the um, Twitter competition for the likes, retweets, follows, and joining the AMA. And the Byte Masons donated $200 worth of oath, and I'm matching the $200 worth of oath, and we'll be running that Twitter picker at the end for those who qualify. We'll be giving $100 worth of oath out to 4 separate people. So thanks for tuning in, and we're looking forward to running that at the end. But just want to make sure I put that out there. I meant to do it at the beginning. So okay, and then also thanks to you guys, JB, for being willing to contribute to that giveaway. Means a lot.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
all right. So speaking of oath, let's dive into the oath ecosystem. What we're really here to talk about. So. Um, let's talk about what you're doing with Reaper and the innovations there. One of the things that you mentioned in your last write-up is that Reaper gives you the power to generate yield on formerly dormant assets in a purely DeFi way with low-risk smart contract rails. So for anyone coming into DeFi looking for the best projects to put their money in, but without a great knowledge base, what does this really mean to them?
Yeah. So really what Reaper allows us to do is it allows us to take every DeFi use case in every vertical, put Reaper underneath it, and make an order of magnitude more revenue on AUM. So an issue that we've seen, like with traditional finance, and even recently, like Celsius, FTX now, is like this concept of shadow banking. So shadow banking is when you take, let's say, Joe Schmo's savings account deposit, and then you turn that into some type of financial instrument and make a lot of money underneath like their deposit, and then give them 0.1%. So that's shadow banking, and a lot of times the issue with it, and this is what caused the 2008 financial crisis, is that these companies are over leveraging these assets in a way that like kind of ruins their bottom line, and it makes them super susceptible to risk, downside risk, and drawdowns, and eventually insolvency. So if you remember in '08, a lot of people went out of business. It was because of shadow banking or rehypothecation. And then now Celsius in crypto, they did the same exact thing. So they were pretending to be DeFi, and they took on everybody's deposits. And then it turns out they just whipped all those deposits to some trading account and lost all the money and went insolvent. And then now FTX, it seems now purely speculative. I don't want to get sued. Some people are saying that they were exposed to outsized risk because Alameda was borrowing FTX assets and then making bad trades. So shadow banking is like the bug that bites the ass of every financial institution that takes on too much risk. But on the other side of that, shadow banking allows these institutions to make orders of magnitude more money than DeFi projects. So you look at something like Aave. Aave, I think, is the best example here because Aave spent $350 million on token incentives over the course of 2021, and they made about $30 million in revenue. And beyond that, their efficiency on AUM, so the amount of revenue they were generating on their TVL was less than 0.3% APR, so per year. And then you look at a firm like JP Morgan Chase. So JP Morgan Chase has close to $4 billion in assets on their books and is making almost 4% in revenue yearly on that AUM. And some banks like HSBC are making 6+%. So you think about how can we as DeFi compete with these traditional institutions who can make more than enough money to kind of crush us into the dirt. And kind of the reason DeFi winds up and unwinds so effectively, and the reason DeFi is so amazing is because it's so inefficient. So the fact that you need to put down way more capital than the value of your loan means that every loan is going to be covered. You're going to be able to wind up and down really, really effectively. So we thought to ourselves, we have Reaper. We have this way that we can, while maintaining the values of DeFi, so while maintaining transparency, while being able to protect principal underlying by depositing and withdrawing assets on demand, we're able to create a really low risk kind of treasury bond-esque environment to put under these protocols. So Granary V2 is going to be kind of the first major implementation of this. Ethos Reserve will also implement this pattern, but we're essentially able to compete with traditional finance in the world of, you know, rehypothecation, or compete toe to toe in the realm of revenue generation without sacrificing DeFi's core values using Reaper. So what this translates to is, you know, probably once we get more marketing materials out, you can see some of this right now in my Medium. I think it's the article titled "Getting Granular" uh, on Medium, my Medium OX Bebis. But where Aave made 30 million in revenue, if we used Reaper to manage their underlying assets or unborrowed underlying assets over the same period, we would have made over $300 million. So an order of magnitude more revenue, and that would put us on par with your JP Morgans and beyond. So all of that is
Yeah,
while
that chart is
maintaining,
crazy.
yeah, all of that is while maintaining an over collateralized state and protecting principal. So all of that is while all of that is in kind of like a risk maintained or risk off environment that's fully transparent top to bottom. So really, really wordy. You know, there are some flashy terms I can throw at you, but the long story short here is DeFi can't compete without this innovation, because we can't under collateralize assets, because when you under collateralize derivative assets, or when you under collateralize loans, you get your Lunas, you get your Tombs, and the industry is way too volatile to support that. So we use the over collateralization of DeFi and the super safety of DeFi. Its strengths and weaknesses both become strengths in our hands. And really, we're the only firm that has all of the potential to do this. We have the multi-strategy vaults. We're working on tranched risk vaults. We have the lending protocol. We have all this infrastructure. So that's really the future of Reaper. It's turning into this underlying management layer, almost like a hedge fund, except way less risky, as we've seen in crypto hedge funds lately, so that we can make all this revenue and then we can direct it right back to the users. So because we're a foundation, because we're a nonprofit, we can, you know, divert all these revenues into, let's say, the grain token, for example. So let's say we make $300 million over the year. All that goes toward buying back grain. And then we can take that grain and over time fix interest rates or create bonds or find really cost-effective ways to regulate our interest rates and regulate our market overall. So really what we gain is a set of superpowers, and you know, it's just by earning more revenue. Like the amount of revenue we can generate beyond the norm right now in DeFi is kind of mind-boggling. And that's really the power of uh, these systems. And like when I say Byte are going to define the narrative of the next crypto bull run or the next DeFi bull run, like I'm not even like exaggerating. Um, I think you'll kind of get a better feel for this once we release our white paper. But what we're doing now is like absolutely vital for us to compete with TradFi, because once we're making as much money as they are, and once we're able to generate as much revenue and give that back to the people, like eating up market share is just a matter of time, and a matter of like energy input. And we can do this with a team of 30 as opposed to a team of 300,000. You know what I mean? So, you know, really, really fabulous work being done by our engineers. Uh, and I'll tell you, like, it's only a matter of time before, Reaper and all the apps built on Reaper become. I mean, I don't want to say they're going to become, the number one app in crypto or in DeFi or beyond, but you look at the numbers and it's hard to think about how it couldn't, you know, as long as everything is executed properly and security and risk are managed properly. So it's exciting to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, for a, a community that's looking for, long-term value and stable returns and, the most bang for their buck and not getting ripped by fees and, all their money going to the people who are running a project. I mean, it's hard to argue with that there. Um, so,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's awesome work.
Yeah, we
Um,
want to be we kind of joke about this, but it's like semi-serious. We want to like be the JP Morgan of DeFi. We want to be the firm that takes DeFi to the people, And we're working
mhm.
on like wallet infrastructure that allows people to make super secure wallets just with like one-click authentication. So there's like a lot of, well, I'm not going to get into the state of cryptography and authentication right now, but like authentication is getting to a point, authentication being putting in your password or like verifying that you are who you say you are through passwords, through 2FA, through whatever. But there's a lot of stuff that is making it easier and easier and easier to onboard users to Web3, and we're pouring like a lot of energy into that because we want people to eventually sign in through Google or sign in through Passkey or sign in through their YubiKey, and not have to onboard people through saying, memorize these 12 words or you'll literally lose all your money, which we think is kind of insane. So just lowering barriers to entry, lowering hurdle rates, improving UX, and then on the back end, making everything like orders of magnitude more efficient. And like there's nobody in the industry. I mean, ignoring the fact that nobody in the industry has a team of engineers like ours, nobody has the software portfolio that we do. And like it feels so good to look like do a competitive analysis and be like, oh wow, these like four companies would have to like join forces to accomplish anywhere near the same stuff that we can accomplish. Uh, and it just kind of, our entire team is behind this vision of taking DeFi to the people and being the entity that brings on, the next billion users and starts eating into that, $1 trillion TradFi market share, uh, which I think we definitely will. And I'd like to be the first because many have tried and not succeeded, and that's just because they don't generate enough value. But Reaper allows us to generate enough value.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, since you've already kind of dove into how you generate that value, since you mentioned it, I guess let's talk a little bit about Moon and what you're doing for the onboarding and on-ramping stuff there to make it easier for people to come into DeFi. What can users expect? I know you're launching a wallet. I know you're launching an app store. What can you tell us about those kind of things that are going to make it easier for those day one and veterans alike to
Yeah,
to really
so
benefit them?
in Moon, we're kind of building a platform that covers every base to a certain extent. So Moon is kind of like a modular package of smaller applications built into like what's essentially a Web3 operating system. And the cool thing about the way we're building this is we have a wallet, we have social rails, we have advertising rails, we have an app store, we have payment rails. We cover like everything that you might want in your application that's peripheral to DeFi or peripheral to whatever your core use case is. That's really hard and annoying to build. And the value for that is we've got 4 DeFi apps. That need all of these tools. And then beyond that, Moon as kind of a generalized OS will allow developers and users to actually like, for example, a developer can list their app in Moon and have like the front end engineering, like a lot of that taken care of using our SDK. They'll have payment rails taken care of. So if they want to accept payments, that'll be like all built in. NFT community gating, that will be built in. If they want to advertise on their platform, that will be built right in. So let's say like, you're Spooky Swap and you want to make some money from people who want to put their asset as the number one slot in your trade window. You can use Moon for that. Or let's say you want your users to be able to chat with you directly in the app. You can use Moon for that. So think customer service, think community management. How you can have like a ship posting channel through Moon in your app. So really, kind of the big part of it for us right now, though, is the wallet and the onboarding. So while all of this stuff is cool and great, and we can build it into all sorts of different applications, what we're laser focused on is how can we make Web3 onboarding and Web3 engagement as simple as it is for Web2 and as intuitive as it is for Web2. So like when you talk about the cost of onboarding, going back to the Aave example, for every dollar of revenue Aave made, they had to spend $9 in incentives. So that's ignoring marketing. That's ignoring all of the other stuff they were doing. In incentives alone, they were spending $9 per dollar they made. And that kind of goes into the concept of like, what is the hurdle rate? How much does it cost to actually get a user to make a wallet and get into your app? And the way we plan on making our apps more efficient is not only by increasing the amount of revenue we're able to generate and increasing the capability of these apps, but also lowering that hurdle rate by making it as easy as anything else for users to onboard with. And obviously, the security trade-off space is really, really compelling there. It is not an easy task, but there's like a lot of really good authentication tech, like I manage, that makes it possible, and it makes it possible in a way that I would argue is more secure than users holding their own keys. And when I say like holding their own keys, in the architectures we have in mind, they would still be the only person who can access their keys and who can sign transactions with their keys. But it would be behind a layer of abstraction where all of their normal authentication tools, being their phone, their home computer, maybe their biometrics, maybe their email, maybe their text message, whatever, all of that can be used to secure their account in a way that's a lot more intuitive. And then they still have control over their keys. They're just housed in a hardware vault in some cloud server somewhere. So getting into hardware security, I think that's like probably something for another time. But like the leaps and bounds that have been made by cloud developers and in cloud architecture allow for something that's effectively more secure than your home computer, where all you're doing is like interacting with, like, think of it like a big wallet mech suit, that's housed somewhere else, in a way that is like beyond secure. So we'll get into that as we start writing up documentation. As Relentless kind of alluded to at the beginning, we're like notorious for like deprioritizing documentation infinitely, because we're always like, our team's always like, oh, dude, what if we do this? And then it's like, oh, wow, we've just changed the paradigm of DeFi. Let's move back documentation 12 months so we don't have to duplicate our efforts. So soon we'll focus harder on documentation. So I apologize for that. But definitely check out my Medium, because it's the best way to get kind of high to medium level dives into all the stuff we're working on. So now that Learn.fi has been absorbed by Blockbytes, I'll be posting there a lot more, medium.com/oxbebis. And I'm trying to get some of our other engineers to write about our products. But I think I like writing more than any of them. So generally stuff goes through me, but also follow me on Twitter and I'll, feed you anything Oath ecosystem related that comes across desk.
Yeah, I don't think I can blame you for not wanting to write the white paper over and over again. I mean, I don't want to read them over and over again, let alone probably
Yeah.
having to write it 60 times. I'm sure that's not a great
Yeah,
a
we're
great
working
thing.
on the final Granary white paper right now. So it should be the last one. And then we've got the final version of the Reliquary white paper. And then, the Ethos Reserve white paper. So we're getting to a point, we've been working on this stuff for like 9 to 12 months. So we're finally getting to a point where everything is set in stone. We just finished like 4 audits. We'll be releasing those reports relatively soon. So, you know, hopefully you should be seeing more technical docs. So thanks everyone for your patience if you've been waiting for that.
Yeah. I mean, I'll try to no promises, but I'm doing some more Twitter threads, so I'll try to make it more digestible if I understand it. If not, I'll just message you and ask you to tell me it in layman's terms, and then I'll put it in a thread.
So
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I'm excited to see the wallet. Anything that that's what first kind of got me into what got me here was trying to look into some kind of project that would make it easier for people to understand how to get into the space and how to get their money on and all this stuff. And then I realized through some conversations with team members here that there's already like 40 of those coming out, and being competitive in that environment without the funding to build something like that and be able to have that time to commit was just unrealistic. But to see things like a user-friendly wallet that is secure and easier, and easier for anyone to use, and more digestible for new users, I think is really cool.
yeah,
So I think I'm pretty pumped for that.
yeah. It's a
So
must-have, and we've been working on it for like 9 months now, 8 months now. So Um, probably we're not going to see the fruits of our labor until early next year, but we're going to start the alpha probably in the next month. So definitely like hang around, and you can bang your head into it for a while we fix front end bugs and stuff.
cool. I'll definitely take part in that. So all right. Well, so I appreciate the rundown there. What you guys are doing with Moon is super awesome. So we'll head on to the next subject here. We already kind of talked about Granary, that kind of flowed earlier. So, and then you mentioned it a couple times. We'll get into Reliquary and Ethos Reserve. So first, what is Reliquary? There's like a couple blurbs on your website, and like there's no documentation. I know it's open source, fully customizable iteration on existing farming infrastructure, able to promote long-term holding without requiring token locks, accomplished through NFT bonds that grant additional emissions. So without the documentation out, without you giving up too much information, because I know you guys don't like to, which is cool, and frustrating. But what is it for those who don't
Um,
know and they've only seen the mentions?
yeah, we're actually in closed beta right now, so some people have already been poking around at it. I'll post a screenshot from the beta. And we can go from there. But basically, Reliquary is a new yield primitive, one that is pretty unique to DeFi. So doing what we're doing in TradFi would be pretty difficult. But essentially, like every second that passes increases the value of your relic. So what this translates to is, as your relic gets older, you will receive a greater share of the yield being distributed to the pool. And really what this does is it makes your position over time more convex. So it makes it more competitive and more prone, or less prone rather, to fluctuating interest rates. And what we've done for this first version of Reliquary, or kind of the core version of Reliquary, and we'll be making more corporate structured type stuff going forward. Am I able to post pictures in the AMA chat? I'll post
You
it
should be
in
able to.
oh, let me give it a try. But um, what we're doing is we are creating what's effectively uh, a
Yeah,
yield farming game. So basically, every single relic is an NFT that's generated on chain. So it's an on chain generated SVG. And these creatures on the relic evolve over time. So as your position gains weight, and as your position increases in age, these relics will slowly transform. So, kind of Pokemon-esque, if you will. But what's happening underlying is really compelling, because as your position ages, you are a more competitive participant in the yield farm. And this is our solution to liquidity locusts, mercenary capital, whatever you want to call them. And it rewards long-term liquidity providers in a much better way. And it rewards them without making them lock their assets, which is something that we're kind of against right now. I mean, I think bonding will be really big in DeFi eventually, but just a little too volatile to make it worthwhile. So what this is, it's essentially like a perpetual floating rate bond. So we'll be emitting assets much like a farm or similar, but as you get older or as your position gets older, you'll be making more money compared to everyone else. And it does it without diluting emissions further. So the same amount of emissions are always going to be sent to that pool. It's just the way we divvy them up changes based on how old your position is, or how many older positions there are. So we basically treat your position as being more valuable the longer you've been in the system. So we plan on building like a lot of cool bonding infrastructure on top of this. We plan on building like honestly a lot of software on top of this, and it essentially levels up DeFi bonds. It levels up DeFi liquidity provision to like kind of an insane degree. And if you incorporate things like locking, or you incorporate gauges, or you incorporate lending, because all of these are NFTs, the underlying assets that used to just sit in farms farting around, those are now tradable and leverageable. You can take out a loan. So it's really kind of our story of how do we make DeFi orders of magnitude more efficient. This is a big part of that. So it's totally open ended, and then all of the assets underlying are managed by Reaper. So any deposits go right from your relic into Reaper, and it's all just one-click deposit USDC, and then Reaper handles the rest and generates you interest. And then on top of that interest, you're getting oath emissions, or grain emissions, or FTM emissions, or whatever tokens we happen to have on hand that we want to emit. So a ton of really technical changes. We're kind of stepping into the market with a fun interface that's designed to get people checking on their finances relatively regularly. So we want to incentivize people, checking on their positions every week, and making sure that, their finances are really healthy. And we've got a lot of interesting stuff coming that leverages game theory to build on top of it, and allows you to possibly earn more yield, earn more maturity if you participate. So kind of GameFi, but it's underpinned by like cutting edge financial infrastructure. And then once we start building like corporate bonds and cool apps on top of it, we'll it'll probably look much different. But this is kind of the top of our retail funnel, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a gamified position without the lower users having to worry about getting diluted.
Yep.
So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It literally prevents dilution on a technical level. So it's
Mhm.
like when interest rates rise, it's really hard to dilute the most mature positions because we're treating their assets as being more valuable. So it is like, all of our research regarding interest rates and things like that. And, how can we incentivize the best possible user without making them lock their funds and do exactly what we say, so that they can maintain liquidity, they can withdraw at any time. In events like today where you're going crazy and super fearful, and maybe need to cover a loan or something like that, you can just pull your assets out and handle it. Or you can take it to the aftermarket and sell it on any NFT exchange. And because the NFT is generated on chain, it's supported out of the box. So, really, really cool in that way. Yeah, it'll be really fun, and
Yeah.
we're going to be opening the beta more and more in the coming weeks, so that users can enjoy it and try it out. We'll have probably the next version this coming week.
Nice. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is if they're able to sell. I mean, I assumed they would, as kind of like become an industry
Yeah,
standard
sell it,
for an
take a
NFT
loan
that
out
anyone's
on
going to
it.
invest in.
Yeah, you can do literally anything. You can do interest rate swaps with them. They facilitate like crazy option strategies. Um, this is what we see DeFi as being built on for the foreseeable future. Not on MasterChef, where assets are like, kind of stupid and don't do anything and don't generate revenue and just sit there. Uh, and then you put them in there and you have nothing to represent them, so you can't go to a market with a bond and take a loan out on it or do anything like that. So this is open-ended, top to bottom, and Beethoven is using it for their upcoming governance upgrade, and we hope a lot of other teams will see it in action and start to adopt it. But it is like so much better than anything else out there. Really, the only trade-off is it's a little more complex. So it'll take a little bit of learning, but as far as the user is concerned, the API is almost exactly the same. So it's just complex for developers. But it's been audited like 3 times now. We're moving to the next version of beta. We're in like really off-risk production testing because we're testing a bunch of front-end stuff. We're testing our zappers and things like that. So yeah, we'll open it up more and more. Right now, it's just our first clown NFT holders that have access, but next week we'll probably add a few more NFTs to that list.
All right, cool. Thanks for the great rundown. I mean, that's not any information I could find honestly online, obviously, but really good to know. And I'm excited. So I
Yeah.
need to get some money set aside for that, I guess. If I want to make
We're advising
money, I
people
better get some ready.
put in $1. So if you can muster a single dollar, then you can participate in the beta.
$1. I'll see what I can scrounge up. Hey, my
Yeah.
Bitcoin short did pretty well, so I guess
Yeah, call your
I can
counterparties,
work
see
on it.
if any of them can uh, you know, tape you up.
Genic, send me $1 when this is over, please. I'll give you some of the APR from that. All right. So, and then I guess the last thing that within the ecosystem of Oath, and I do kind of want to ask some things specifically about Oath, and for Oath holders, but if you want to talk about the Ethos Reserve, so it's a highly efficient stablecoin system which can take on arbitrary collateral types and rehypothecate reserve assets with Reaper. You mind breaking that down?
Yeah, let me put
Tell
it
us really
in
what
like
Ethos is.
I'm going to put
Yeah,
this in the
layman's terms.
absolute simplest terms possible. Are you familiar with Liquidity?
Yes.
So we took the Liquidity code base. We made it so you can add any asset. We made it so we can rehypothecate underlying assets, and we changed the economic structure. And that's what Ethos is. And you know, we're doing like different stuff with it. What Ethos will be specifically is Bitcoin and ETH on L2 networks. So borrowing stable coins against Bitcoin and ETH on L2 networks. So the goal is USDC, as great as it is, holding it is kind of scary because you can get your assets turned off anytime. So thinking about what is the best, most rewarding way to create a stable coin that is as off risk as possible with as much access to capital as possible. So with only BTC and ETH underlying, EUSD is going to be a fabulous asset. And it's going to benefit from all of the like super liquidations and ultra stability, all the superlatives I can think of for that Liquidity has, but it's going to have way more power. So, we spent months working on this, like iterating on their code base is tremendously difficult. But we wanted to start with who we thought was the best in the business. And then taking it one step further, we were thinking, okay, we're doing all this rehypothecation. Where the hell are we supposed to get interest? How the hell are we supposed to scale interest? So the other thought we had is, how can we turn Ethos Reserve into the treasury bonds of DeFi? So there's this concept that will come, as Ethos Reserve has aged a bit, of re-USD. So we have EUSD and then we have re-USD. Re-USD is the Reaper vault for the stability pool for Ethos Reserve. And now we're kind of getting into the weeds a little bit, but let me kind of jump back up. What re-USD is going to be is, it's going to be a stable backed only up asset that exposes the buyer to Bitcoin and ETH volatility, as well as Bitcoin and ETH yield. So, and it does it in a way that concentrates it into this re-USD package. So what we're talking is an asset that will be more liquid and will probably net more yield than a US Treasury bond without being susceptible to any centralization risks at all. So that was kind of like, our goal with the USD is to be the best stablecoin, period. And it's something that, like, you dig into it, and I'll write more about this on my Medium once we're a little closer to release in the next couple months. But you sit down and you think about it, Liquidity being the ultimate stablecoin protocol. What if all of that Ethereum and Liquidity was generating yield? And what if all that yield was sent to oath holders and EUSD stakers? And what if all of the liquidations and all of the yield on top of that was managed with ReUSD and then bonded with Reliquary beyond that? So really, it's like, Ethos Reserve is low key going to be like probably the most killer app, the most killer DeFi app maybe ever. We try, like, our goal is to be really slow in unfolding and taking on risk, because it'll be there before Granary V2. So we're going to be like very slowly raising deposit caps, getting a ton of security audits from really top firms. And if I'm being honest, like, even lending protocols that take on way more risk won't be able to compete. Even lending protocols that are emitting an insane amount of incentive tokens won't be able to compete. And FJB 258, it is like, I don't want to sound like an asshole, but it is like, going back to kind of the Granary conversation, we're going to be generating an order of magnitude more revenue than any of these protocols. And all of that revenue is going to be sent directly to the user. So you think about what that means for growth, and you think about what that means for the gravity and the mass of the ecosystem. Like, you think, like, down the line, months and months and years in production, it is inevitable that we win. And the code base is licensed, all rights reserved. So nobody's going to be able to just fork it and compete with us. And the fact that we own the rehypothecation rails in Reaper, and the fact that we own the target market in Granary, it's literally like, I look at ByteMason as like number 890 or whatever on the market cap list, and I laugh, and then I like go to the market and buy more oath. Not financial advice, but it is like, it's insane. Like, people have no idea what's coming, and I really want to, work with the community and work with the team to define the next big DeFi narrative. And all these DeFi narratives that pop up, like Luna, Mim, Ohm, it's like total fluff. It's almost embarrassing being like a hardline like DeFi engineer. So we've been like developing all this stuff in the background, watching all this stuff rise and fall, and we're like, soon TM. But it is like, it's the result of years of hard work, and we're getting to a point where we're nearing production. Audits are complete on almost the entire stack. and it's just a matter of time at this point. And you know, we the market crashed, and we're like, all right, there was that first kind of relief pump, and then we changed all of our liquidity pairings for Oath into USDC, so that we weren't like exposed to any of like the secondary risk of being paired to volatile assets. So now we sit back and we watch like the market go crazy, and we just like scratch our chins and we're like, dude, I can't wait for us to start kind of putting our hands on the table, putting our cards on the table, literally in the Reliquary sense, but figuratively otherwise. Um, but yeah, it's dope. We're super duper excited, and Ethos is like the dopest thing ever. And like I try not to talk about it too much because like people will start getting ideas. But it's the sort of thing where, you know, once you hear it, you're like, oh my God. And we've been talking to some of our industry partners, and it's just like, you know, if you're a DeFi fan, then you know, watch out for the Ethos Reserve Medium article and the Ethos Reserve launch, because I don't see a reason to hold any other stablecoin once we're live. If I'm being honest, not to be like again like an asshole, but it's awesome. I'm excited. I guess you can probably tell.
Yeah, just a little bit, which is cool. I mean, you guys put a lot of work into it. You should be excited. So this is you guys are the since I didn't know a ton about what you guys were doing with your stablecoin specifically, really until now. You guys are the second stablecoin that or second project I've talked to that's doing a stablecoin that is trying to use ETH or well, you guys are using Bitcoin volatility as well to generate yield. Have you guys looked at Dyad and what they're doing with their ETH
Oh
stable?
yeah. Dyad is not doing any rehypothecating, but yeah, I talked
Correct.
to
Yeah.
I talked to him for a while. It is like a really cool project, thinking about the game theory and thinking about the experience. I
Hmm.
think it could be a lot of fun, honestly. I don't know if I have the time to participate, but that's like a narrative
Yeah, it
that I'm
definitely takes
pushing
a lot of
quickly.
management.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But
Yeah.
like it's kind of in the same vein as Bean. Like Bean is a project that like if you're a researcher, a DeFi researcher, like you've got your eyes on Bean, you're looking at every update, you're looking at every paper, you're like, these guys are cool. I see Dyad as the same way. It's like I don't see necessarily a path to shining success and massive adoption. Um, but I
Hmm.
see one of the more interesting designs in a protocol, and I see perhaps like if it's marketed well, you know, one of the defining like poster boys for DeFi, like, hey, DeFi is cool. Look at this shit we're doing. So yeah, and if you haven't looked at Bean, again, not I don't own Bean, not financial advice. I don't own a stake in Dyad or anything, but yeah, Dyad, Bean, two of my favorites as far as like protocol design. So really, really dope. And Joey, the guy that heads it off, he's super duper smart. And a friend of mine wrote the whole system. So yeah, I'm like I'm going to try to participate. Honestly, what I'll do if it gets successful, I'll try to get the Reaper guys to build an optimizer for it, so I can just participate by sitting in Reaper. But yeah, Dyad gets a big seal of approval from me.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be able to get Joey on for an AMA and get to talk to him about that because when I was kind of reading through everything and kind of trying to make sense of it, I was like, how's this going to work? You know what I mean? I was like, how does the dampening vault work? How do these emissions work? How do the
Yeah.
NFTs acting as little banks or whatever? And then when he broke it all down to me, I was like, oh man, okay, this is
Yeah.
pretty crazy
It's a
cool.
cool
So,
game. It's
but
like a cool financial
yeah, it
game.
really
And
is.
that's like that's what options are. That's what like everything is. And you know, we've got cool financial games of chance that have become like multi-trillion. Those assets are then deposited into Reaper so that Reaper can generate yield for them. And that yield being generated by Reaper, uh, a lot of that is coming from Granary. So it'll be depositing assets to create supply in Granary. So we're able to have super efficient emissions in Reliquary And then we're getting a TVL count in Reliquary, a TVL count in Reaper, a TVL count in Granary. We're making every system more efficient, and all of those systems will grow and be symbiotic. And Reliquary will allow us to onboard users that may not generally participate in DeFi. So people who like NFTs, people who like video games, people who aren't really in tune with finance, we can push them through Reliquary in a really kind of fun, positive sum manner. And then eventually, when we're creating like bonds with Reliquary and have locking periods and have different like mechanisms that make them more kind of hedge fund or institution focused, as opposed to like permissionless, in and out perpetual bonds. We can like do really crazy stuff and contract it up on the other end. So yeah, it really all assets end in Reaper, and then Reaper like just makes ecosystems more efficient and makes user engagement with DeFi really easy, and allows them to get like hedge fund returns without needing to have $100 million, which is why DeFi is so cool. So, really exciting positive sum ecosystem, and the impact is massive. And the success of a single app within the ecosystem spreads to the rest. So when you think about it, like the Oath ecosystem is truly, truly inevitable, because all of them are so seamlessly integrated. And I say this all the time, like VCs, you look at Web2 VCs owning, every piece of tech and then making all those companies work together to like have like a weird, like, uh, compounding effect. Grubhub advertises on Facebook, who, advertises on some other platform, and the same VCs own everything. We're like, we want the people to own all this stuff. And there is not a single hedge fund in the space that is as far along as we are tech wise. And none of them are like even within years of having the synergy we do and the deep integrations that we do. So, we're kind of seeing our thesis tested again and again, coming out on top. And we hope in the next year, Byte Masons will be a household name in the industry. And, thanks everybody for listening, and hope you can help us push that narrative along. Because I think without what we're doing, DeFi is not going to be able to compete and take market share from TradFi.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think for anyone who's here now, if you think about what could be done in a year with this project, how early that would be considered. Obviously, right? Not financial advice. Do your own research, but I mean, it's hard to argue with. So
Yeah, I'm not a financial advisor or whatever, so I'm just a nerd and a programmer and whatnot. So definitely do some research, try our apps. I hope you all enjoy this really exciting space, and I think we're all lucky to be here, to be honest, even on days like today.
yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just kind of crazy, like watching everything that happened today.
Yeah,
It
that's
just
all
really shows you.
TradFi. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
we're in DeFi, like our coins are going down, sure, but like DeFi is just so much better. The transparency, the over collateralization, the ability to be elastic in the face of an ever changing market environment, I think is just insane. And we're always going to come out on top, I
Hmm.
think, DeFi users, as long as they don't get liquidated. So be careful. But yeah, it's freaking dope.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my best to not get liquidated. No promises to myself. Um, okay, cool. Yeah. So, and then I want to kind of grab a couple of the questions. You already touched a little bit on what you're doing with Learn.fi, um, and then your moves there. You kind of touched on that earlier, so I won't cover that. And then you talked about your marketing and what your really approach there is, which I think has worked out just fine for you guys.
Yeah.
I want to, if you still have a few more minutes, I'd like to ask a couple of these good questions that we saw from the audience.
Sure, probably has to be a lightning round because I need to, as Mark Jeffries puts it, I need to have a bio break because I drink caffeine all morning. You know what I'm saying? But
That's
yeah, let them rip. I'll be quick and not long-winded. Probably,
that's
maybe.
fair. Once, probably, maybe. Where was? Well, I gotta find it now. It's gonna be a problem if I can't find it, huh?
It's over.
There was one real good one. Um, oh, I think. Oh yeah. Okay. So from PepCap, hey Bebis, question: what measures will be taken to make the Oath ecosystem sufficiently decentralized in the eyes of regulators? And that's kind of a loaded question with what's coming from regulation that we don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to ask that.
Yeah, I mean, there are two approaches to regs and compliance. It's decentralize as far as possible, or actually do the hard work to be compliant. And right now, we're compliant. So, a goal of ours is decentralization, but we don't have like the balls to the wall need to rush uh, decentralization. And, you know, you can't secure a decentralized environment without a lot of market cap, without a lot of mass. So, we have two nonprofit foundations. We have two BVI token issuer corporations. We have an entity in Singapore. We have an entity in the US that we house our IP in. You know, we have like another entity in the US somewhere. So, long story short, like we're kind of we're just fine for now. And then, I think eventually there will be a need to decentralize quite aggressively. I think if you look at the results of like the library coin litigation, although it didn't set a precedent, and I think the results were kind of stupid, but it does kind of clue us in like, hey, judges aren't going to like what we're doing necessarily unless they're really crypto friendly. So, um, decentralization is in our roadmap. So we're unfolding governance in the coming month or so here. And then especially as we start emitting incentives, that will be governed. Uh, and we're going to start with snapshot. We're going to kind of copy the Beethoven methodology to a certain extent. And then we have our legal advisors that are helping us make sure it's really cool. So yeah, as far as like the race to decentralization or the race to beat regulation, we've done that in kind of an absolute sense with our work on the legal end of things. But for like infinite longevity, full decentralization, uh, you know, once we see, a 9+ figure market cap on Oath, we'll start to hand functionality over. It's just like it's easy to attack governance systems, as we've seen lately with like the Mango Markets hack, the Fortress DAO exploit. Aave and Compound are constantly at odds, like can't push proposals through because governance is so inefficient. And really, until it's impossible to just buy a ton of Oath and then attack our governance, the Oath Foundation will be managing that. So. Beyond that, though, it is like necessary for us to work pretty closely with ecosystem governors and stuff. Um, so yeah, we're kind of starting the process, and we hope in the next 3, 4, 5 years we'll be like super fully decentralized and have a really engaged user base. And a cool thing about Reliquary and starting to gamify this engagement is now we can plug governance right into that system, and we can get people actually involved instead of have the same like 5 VCs vote on every proposal. So governance right now, the state of governance in DeFi is a little bit of a sham. We have like our perfect fix, but it's going to take years to get there. And in the meantime, we have actual legal infrastructure to protect us and protect our users and protect our employees. I said I wasn't going to be
Fun.
long-winded, but I lied.
That's fine. You're totally fine, sir. It's a great approach. It's a cautious but well thought out approach. I think that's really all any of us can do right now.
Yeah.
Just we have no idea what's coming. We'll see what happens with Ripple, and then maybe that'll give us some more ideas.
Yeah.
Um, And then the other AMA questions were kind of answered throughout, and I'll go back and find those questions and answer for them. So I'm not going to take up too much more of your time. But the last question I really want to ask is, what advice do you have for users navigating the space right now? Is there anything you think people should be really paying attention to outside of the battle for regulation?
Yeah. I would say the number one thing is trust but verify, you know. Um, I think like part of being in this space and part of operating at a low level, technically speaking, you need to develop an adversarial mindset. And you need to understand that you are the owner of your bank account and you custody your funds. So you need to make sure that if you're interacting with anything inside or outside of DeFi, that you are understanding that it could be an avenue of attack. Uh, so not to be like Mr. Scary Guy, but have a Chromebook that you manage your DeFi from, where you're not watching porn and pirating video games, because there are like so many ways to deliver malicious code and so many ways to steal your private keys that if you're not very, very serious about your OPSEC, you're going to get dinged. And then all of the value you've been accruing and are projecting is going to accrue in your portfolio turns to zero. And Google postmodern portfolio theory, see how you should be assessing downside risk, and figure out ways to prevent the 100 to zero so you can focus on the 0 to 100. But that's really it. Just avoid massive risk, and you should be okay. Because if you're taking you're like, oh, it's only a 10% chance or only a 1% chance I get dinged, and then you do that same thing 100 times, your EV is zero. So I know that's not how probability works, technically speaking, but just be extra careful and don't chase the trend, don't chase the bag, chase the signal, and whatever the signal you should be chasing is really up to your values and your investment goals and
Hmm.
your goals with your finances overall. So be cautious, be careful, and make sure you do plenty of reading of newsletters and things so you can stay on top of trends.
Yeah, phenomenal advice. Thanks so much. All right. Well,
Course.
I think that wraps up all the questions that I have. I'll run this Twitter giveaway, but I know you're running out of time here, so
All right, dope. Yeah, I
um,
have a meeting
I'll
5 minutes
I'll go
ago
ahead
and
and
I need to take a pee break. So thank you all
yeah,
very much for your
absolutely.
time. You know, I know it's valuable. So thanks everybody. And bye bye.
Yeah, it was an honor to have you. So thanks for everything and have a good night.